crime has affected his life and his family. It is very hard to describe into words how my life has changed by this horrendous crime. Over the course of the past 3 years, I have developed PTSD. I have constant day-to-day flashbacks of the shooting and the screaming. I also have to live with the constant reminder as I have to endure daily physical pain which will follow me for the rest of my life. I've been unable to maintain or fulfill a reasonable social relationship with my friends and family during my time of grievance. To this day, I lie and put on a good face to my friends, co-workers, children, family, and loved ones, so that they don't have to worry about me and feel the need to try to figure out how to make me feel better. I now have to walk with a cane and endure looks from strangers of why. I've also been called House from the TV show. I find myself sometimes hiding behind jokes because my scars and limp have made me self-conscious of my own body and looks. My family and friends don't look at me the same way as they did before the shooting, and most days I feel I have to go out of their way, and most days I feel they have to go out of their way to make sure I'm comfortable with my surroundings. I also believe that they feel the need to be careful with their words to avoid an awkward conversation that would trigger anything about my injuries or emotional state. Part B, please describe any physical or emotional injuries sustained as a result of this crime. I suffer from muscle and chronic pain in my left leg and neuropathic pain in my right arm that fluctuates at a pain level scale between 4 and 7 on most normal days. I've lost partial functionality and a loss of feeling in the fingers of my right hand and left foot. My life now revolves around taking pain pills, muscle relaxants, and nerve medications to diminish my pain. I attend a combination of physical and strength therapy 3 times a week so I can develop muscle strength and flexibility and try to live a semblance of the life that I had before the shooting. Eventually, I will have to have reconstructive surgery in my arm to release nerve pain, and I'm in talks with my doctors about amputating my left leg to lessen the physical pain. In addition, I'm dealing with the emotional strain of the financial impact of the time in the hospital, out of work, rehabilitation, giving up on my dream job, and the ongoing surgeries have had on me and my family. What do you believe could be done to assist in repairing the harm inflicted on you and their family? He wrote, "There is nothing that can permanently be done to repair the injuries that were inflicted on me. Constant surgery and physical therapy are the only options that I have. Compensation to cover my physical therapy and the building hospital expenses for past and future surgeries are the only restitution I believe I can benefit from at this time." Conditions that he would like to see the court impose on the defendant. I would like to hear a formal apology from the defendant to me, the rest of the families, and victims that were affected by this mass shooting. It's my wish that the apology be televised on air. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McGuire.
Marissa Sharp. Your Honor, I looked up the story I spoke to you about yesterday, and if possible, please read it into the record. This is Gregory Medek, M-E-D-E-K, who is the father of homicide victim Michaela Medek, M-I-C-A-Y-L-A. I would also like to have it in the record that my opinion is this case was about good and evil, and that the attached article did happen to Renee and myself, and there is way more to it than just this article. The article is titled, "Greg Medek, Loss of Daughter in Aurora Shooting, Ruined My Life," by Colleen, C-O-L-L-E-E-N, O'Connor. Greg Medic sums up the loss of his daughter, 23-year-old Michaela, in just 4 words. It ruined my life. Medic, 49, finds it hard to get up each morning, surviving through work and with his wife Renee, trying to be strong for Michaela's older siblings, Amanda and Shane. Kayla was the baby of our family, he said. Everyone looked out for her. 6 days after the funeral, he found himself alone in the house. I could pray as loud and fervently as I wanted, he said. I stood in the hallway across from her old bedroom, and I asked Jesus for a message or a sign because I needed to know for sure where she was. The following morning, he and Renee were up early. I saw in the archway to our back door a very beautiful blue fluorescent light ringing in the door frame. Like something was standing there, illuminated in that heavenly blue light, he said. I walked over there, and it was breathtaking, like it was shimmering. I didn't want to touch it. He had taken a few steps toward the living room to get his wife when this very powerful presence, like a life presence, poured into the living room and filled the entire room, he said. All my cares and troubles, all my grief and sorrow, all the pain in my heart melted off me and off her. We just looked at each other and said, yeah, she is with Christ in heaven. It was a fleeting oasis. That's the only solace I have, he said, knowing that she's on the other side, waiting for me and her mom and brother and sister, and that all her cares in the world are over. After a pause, he speaks through tears. But it doesn't help me go through it now, he said. It kills me every day that I can't wrap my arms around her and say, I love you. I just want her back so bad. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, thank you.
George and Amy Schaefer.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning.
Judge, with the court's permission, I'm privileged to read a victim impact statement from William Boyk, B-O-I-K, brother of A.J. Boyk. It's from a pre-printed victim impact statement answering the 4 various questions. It is a bit hard to read, Judge. I'll do my best. Please describe how this crime has affected your life and your family. This crime has stolen the life of my brother, my friendship with my brother, and the future I expected to have with him as we both grew older. Our relationship at the time was expanding as he was maturing and moving on to college. Additionally, my mother sees this, and it broke her heart even more, and mine even more, to see it happen. Please describe any physical or emotional injuries sustained as a result of this crime. There are too many emotional injuries to list here. Most notably, seeing my family, my friends, AJ's friends, and our community collectively devastated. Even after 3 years, I feel the pain, and the pain of others as we grieve. What do you believe could be done to assist in repairing the harm inflicted on you and your family? Prevention. The problem being that you cannot always do that. Additionally, it makes it a lot more difficult when such a plotted crime interrupts the innocent lives in such an unexpected way. Are there any conditions you would like to see the court impose on the defendant? I want no contact in any way, and I wish the same for the defendant to the world. I believe he should never be given parole, nor get to see the world he stole from his victims. Signed, William Boyk.
Thank you. Ms. Stitch McGuire.
Kathleen Larimer.
The people of the state of Colorado versus James Egan Holmes, case number 12CR 1522. The record should reflect that Mr. Holmes is present with his attorneys and the prosecutors are present as well. Ms. Stitch McGuire, are you ready to proceed? Oh, Mr. Brockler, you're up.
Yes, sir. This is a statement that's going to be about Jessica Gowie, and he murdered Jessica by shooting her in the head with a rifle. This is from Sandy Phillips, SandyPhillips, mother of homicide victim Jessica, Jessica Gowie, Ghawi. Our daughter Jessica Gowie had a close call in another mass shooting while visiting Toronto. 6 weeks after that close call, we were having services for our baby girl. I told her that day that she'd seen the worst of mankind and would never see anything like that again. I lied to her. She encountered an evil monster right in her neighborhood. We will never know if she had the same uneasy feeling the night of her murder, but we do know the impact gun violence had on her sweet, kind heart before she died. What follows was written by victim Jessica Gowie about an incident she was in on June 2nd, 2012. It's titled, Late Night Thoughts on the Eaton, E-A-T-O-N, Center Shooting. I can't get this odd feeling out of my chest. This empty, almost sickening feeling won't go away. I noticed this feeling when I was in the Eaton Center in Toronto just seconds before someone opened fire in the food court. An odd feeling which led me to go outside and unknowingly out of harm's way. It's hard for me to wrap my mind around how a weird feeling saved me from being in the middle of a deadly shooting. What started off as a trip to the mall to get sushi and shop ended up as a day that has forever changed my life. I was on a mission to eat sushi that day, and when I'm on a mission, nothing will deter me. When I arrived at the Eaton Center Mall, I walked down to the food court and spotted a sushi restaurant. Instead of walking in, sitting down, and enjoying sushi, I changed my mind, which is very unlike me, and decided that a greasy burger and poutine would do the trick. I rushed through my dinner. I found out after seeing a map of the scene that minutes later, a man was standing in the same spot I just ate at and opened fire in the food court full of people. Had I had sushi, I would have been in the same place where one of the victims was found. My receipt shows my purchase was made at 6:20 p.m. After that purchase, I said I felt funny. It wasn't the kind of funny you feel after spending money you know you shouldn't have spent. It was almost a panicky feeling that left my chest feeling like something was missing. A feeling that was overwhelming enough to lead me to head outside in the rain to get fresh air, instead of continuing back into the food court to go shopping at Sport Check. The gunshots rang out at 6:23. Had I not gone outside, I would have been in the midst of gunfire. I walked around the outside of the mall. People started funneling out of every exit. When I got back to the front, I saw a police car, an ambulance, and a fire truck. I initially thought that maybe the street performer that was drumming there earlier had a heart attack or something, but more and more police officers, ambulances, and fire trucks started showing up. Something terrible has happened. I overheard a panicked guy say, quote, "There was a shooting in the food court," end quote. I thought that there was no way. I was just down there. I asked him what happened. He said, quote, "Some guy just opened fire, shot about 8 shots. It sounded like balloons popping. The guy is still on the loose," end quote. I'm not sure what made me stick around at this point instead of running as far away from the mall as possible. Shock? Curiosity? Human nature? Who knows? Standing there in the midst of the chaos all around us, police started yelling to get back and make room. I saw a young shirtless boy writhing on a stretcher with his face and head covered by the EMS as they rushed him by us to get him into an ambulance. The moment was surprisingly calm. The EMTs helping the boys weren't yelling orders and no one was screaming like a nighttime medical drama. It was as if it was one swift movement to get the boy out of the mall and onto the ambulance. That's when it really hit me. I felt nauseous. Who would go into a mall full of thousands of innocent people and open fire? Is this really the world we live in? Police started yelling again, "Get back now!" Another stretcher came rushing out of the mall. I saw a man on a stretcher, the blanket underneath him spotted with blood. Multiple gunshot holes in his chest, side, and neck were visible. It's It's not like in the movies when you see someone shot and they're bleeding continuously from the wound. There was no blood flowing from the wounds. I could only see the holes. Numerous gaping holes, as if his skin was putty and someone stuck their fingers in it. Except these wounds were caused by bullets. Bullets shot out of hatred. His dark skin on his torso was tinted red with what I assume was his own blood. He was rushed into the ambulance and taken away. More people joined the crowd at the scene and asked what happened. Quote, "There was a shooting in the food court," end quote, kept being whispered through the crowd like a game of telephone. I was standing near a security guard when I heard him say over the walkie-talkie, quote, "One fatality," end quote. At this point, I was convinced I was going to throw up. I'm not an EMT or a police officer. I'm not trained to handle crime and murder. Gun crimes are fairly common where I grew up in Texas, but I never imagined I'd experience a violent crime firsthand. I'm on vacation and wanted to eat and go shopping. Everyone else at the mall probably wanted the same thing. I doubt anyone left for the mall imagined they'd witness a shooting. I was shown how fragile life was on Saturday. I saw the terror on bystanders' faces. I saw the victims of a senseless crime. I saw lives change. I was reminded that we don't know when or where our time on earth will end. When or where we will breathe our last breath. For one man, it was in the middle of a busy food court on a Saturday evening. I say all the time that every moment we have to live our life is a blessing. So often I have found myself taking it for granted. Every hug from a family member, every laugh we share with friends, even the times of solitude are all blessings. Every second of every day is a gift. After Saturday evening, I know I truly understand how blessed I am for each second I am given. I feel like I'm overreacting about what I experienced, but I can't help but be thankful for whatever caused me to make the choices that I made that day. My mind keeps replaying what I saw over in my head. I hope the victims make a full recovery. I wish I could shake this odd feeling from my chest. The feeling that's reminding me how blessed I am. The same feeling that made me leave the Eaton Center. The feeling that may have potentially saved my life.
Thank you, Mr. Brockler. Ms. Fish-McGuire?
Tony Bellapondo and Pamela Zeiderwick.
From Stacy McQuinn, stepmother of homicide victim Matt McQuinn, and Stacy is spelled S-T-A-C-I-E. I'm Stacy McQuinn, stepmother of Matthew Robert McQuinn, who was murdered by the defendant on July 20th, 2012, during the early morning hours while watching the Batman Dark Knight Rises movie in Aurora, Colorado. We found out about the shooting at about 5 a.m. on July 20th, 2012, when Matt's mother, Jerry, called. We did not head out, for we had two boys that were 13 and 10 years of age at the time, Matthew's half-brothers, that were devastated, and we felt that we needed to be here for them. Matthew's dad, Richard, handles things like this, and most anything differently, keeps things to himself to process, which caused him to have stress-related seizures in which he would be very quiet and have a far-off look. He wouldn't remember what he was doing and did not realize the time had passed. Richard's relationship with Matthew had been a good one. Matthew would stop by when he could, and most times Samantha would be with him. Trevor and Anthony had a great and close relationship with their oldest brother, even though they were 13 and 16 years apart in age. So the relationship was very different than Matthew's relationship with his brother Eric and his many stepbrothers. Trevor and Anthony missed their brother very much and remember doing things with Matt. Matt showing Trevor how to shoot a handgun and an airsoft gun, having Easter egg hunts at the Schaefer's, Jerry's parents' place, Matthew wrapping Anthony in a blanket and calling him a burrito, playing ball with them and watching Trevor and Anthony play ball when he could. Matthew, when he lived here in Ohio, would come and stay with the boys if needed. My relationship with Matthew was a good one for coming into his life when he was about 8 or 9 years of age. As for Matthew's murder, how it's affected his family since, my relationship with Trevor and Anthony, who are now 16 and 13, has become closer, if we could get any closer. Their relationship with their father is not as close. Their relationship with Richard, my husband, has become distant. Even though we are still married, it is very stressful. Due to a medical issue in September of 2012, he was off work, and because he was off for longer than allowed, he lost his job. He has had only jobs through temp agencies here and there, which has caused more stress for us. Even though we have issues, we've been able together this time by leaning on our faith, as well as the support of our family, friends, and the church. We still live our lives one day at a time. Some days we live it 1 minute at a time. Matthew will never be able to see Trevor and Anthony graduate from school, tease them about girlfriends, or give advice on girls, see them get their driver's license, get married and have kids. So what the defendant did in the early morning hours of July 20th, 2012 has taken things from our family that we will never be able to get back. But we can rest a little knowing that Matthew Robert McQuinn died a real hero, saving the life of the one he loved, Samantha Yower. There's not much that could be done to repair things that had taken place, but I would like to see the court let the defendant have no visitation of any kind from family and friends. We are unable to visit our loved ones and unable to hug them, give a kiss, hold their hand, to rejoice in their joy, embrace them when they are sad. We are unable to pick up the phone and say, "Hi, how are you doing?" We are unable to write them telling them what is happening. Cannot send a birthday or any type of cards that say we love you, and no emails. So the defendant should not be able to have any of those things from his family and friends. Matthew McKinn's stepmother, Your Honor, Stacy McQuinn.
Thank you. Ms. Stitchell-White.
Noel Larimer. Statement from Stephanie Davies, a Theater 9 survivor, and it's S-T-E-P-H-A-N-I-E, and Davies is D-A-V-I-E-S. I, Stephanie Davies, am a survivor of the July 20th Aurora Movie Theater Massacre. I do not wish the defendant to ever be permitted to contact myself or any member of my family or friends. To attempt to describe the impact of the defendant's actions on my life is an impossible task. In fact, I would rather give birth unmedicated than to write this, but I think it's important for the court to understand a few things. I was barely 21 years old when my life was changed forever. Not only would this heinous act change my life and the lives of those close to me, including my immediate family, but it would also affect the life of the family I did not yet have. 3 years later, I now have an 8-month-old son. He is sweet and precious and completely innocent. I will never be able to share one of my favorite childhood pastimes with him. I lie awake at night wondering how in the hell I'm ever going to muster the courage to let him go out with his friends when he's older. I thought I was doing something safe. I was going to a movie with my best friend. I was eating stale nachos and overly salted popcorn and having a great time doing it with my favorite person. I walked out of that theater a victim of attempted murder. My best friend nearly bled to death in my arms. I had to make a choice of whether to call 911 because my best friend was dying, or call my family and tell them I love them for quite possibly the last time. I laid in blood, cradling my friend and begging her not to die, pleading with her to breathe, and for the love of God to be quiet as we were still under fire. The defendant has not only stolen my innocence, but that of my infant son as well. How could the defendant have stolen my son's innocence before he was even conceived? When the day comes that he asks why he can't go to the movies, I will have to tell him why Mommy is scared of the movie theater. Because someone tried to kill Mommy in a movie theater. Can you imagine how awful that would be to tell your child? Can you imagine intentionally draining a little bit of that twinkle in their eyes? Imagine telling your child that monsters are real. try telling your child not to be scared of the dark when you are still scared of the dark yourself? These are things that I will have to face one day. The ability to protect aspects of my child's innocence was stolen from me that night, not to mention the grief this has caused my own mother. Every time I have left the house since July 19, 2012, she has a question lingering in her mind of whether or not she will see me alive again. I now understand what a frightening thought that is, to worry that one day I may get a phone call in the middle of the night that my child has just lived a nightmare when I thought he was doing something safe. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. The gruesome acts of the defendant changed my personality. I was sweet and compassionate. I was understanding and gentle and carefree. It changed my best friend's personality too. She was once bubbly, fun, energetic, and always positive. I felt like she turned into someone pessimistic, angry, manipulative, harsh, and bitter. I felt like she held it against me that I was not physically injured. Can you imagine being so changed that you would wish harm had come to someone you loved? Can you imagine wishing harm had come to yourself if it would have meant that you could have kept your loved one? We were both so damaged and traumatized by his acts that our friendship didn't survive the 2 months immediately following the shooting. Being around each other reminded us too much of this terrible thing we went through together. It was easier to try to heal by ourselves in our own messed up ways. Our friendship was stolen from us. I wasn't me anymore. I was numb inside. I had become this empty shell of a person who had no ability to relate to other human beings because my emotional capacity had been tainted, overexhausted, strangled, stretched, and mangled into an unrecognizable beast. I was trapped in my nightmare. When I awoke every morning, I saw a young man's pale face with piercing eyes staring up at me and his blood and brains scattered about. The face of a lifeless young man who I had to step over in order to carry my friend out of the theater. That's how I got to start my day, every single day. How could I possibly relate to other people when I couldn't even relate to myself? I was short-tempered and unstable. I remember there was a power outage at a restaurant where I worked probably 6 months after the shooting. It scared me so bad I wet myself. I was almost 22 years old and I had to call my mom to come and get me from work because I couldn't drive myself home because I was crying and shaking uncontrollably. I lost over $200 in tips that night. This beast known as PTSD would take over at any given moment, and the little bit of me that was hanging on by a thread would fall effortlessly back down into the darkness. It nearly ripped my family to shreds. No one could help me out of this downward spiral on which I was descending. They had almost lost me once, and they were losing me again. Every day, I felt like I was drowning. Like I was fighting my hardest, but I was choking and flailing and trying to breathe, and I couldn't talk. Every time I tried to talk, the words just couldn't make their way out. It took divine intervention by way of the conception of my son to pull me out of the water. I finally felt like I had a reason to live. I felt finally like I had a life inside of me, and I mean that in more than just the obvious way. In my experience, God is often quite literal. I've suffered through 3 years of sleepless nights, 3 years of nights filled with terrors, 3 years of clenching my jaw and grinding my teeth so bad that I now have TMJ, 3 years of having an emotional breakdown every time Batman comes on the television, 3 years of going to restaurants and scouting out all possible exits and choosing the seat that faces the door so I can always see who comes in and goes out of the building. 3 years of avoiding even walking past a movie theater. 3 years of public panic attacks and high anxiety. 3 years of being angry for no reason. 3 years of debilitating migraines. 3 years of seeing my attacker's face plastered on television and social media. 3 years of declining from moving outings with friends. 3 years of explaining why. 3 years of wondering how different my life would be if it were not for the actions of the defendant. 3 years of unpredictable lash-outs. 3 years of painful memories. 3 years of having to acknowledge an anniversary of unnecessary deaths. 3 years of remembering that July 20th could have been the anniversary of my death. It has taken me 3 years to feel comfortable in my own skin again. 3 years to recognize the face I see in the mirror as my own. 3 years to recover aspects of my personality from before the shooting that I never thought I would see again. These 3 years were stolen from me. You know what's really sad? These things I have endured for 3 years, these things that cause me physical and emotional pain on a daily basis, these things are not going to go away. There's something about almost being murdered and seeing innocent people slaughtered before your eyes that stays with you forever. The defendant has taken so much more than the lives of 12 people. He's taken life from those of us who are still breathing. Stephanie Davies.
Thank you. Speak from Maya.
Jansen Young. My name is Scott M. Larimer, and I am the father of John Thomas Larimer, who was brutally murdered on July 20th, 2012, along with 11 others in the Century 16 Theater located in Aurora, Colorado. The following is my desire to convey the impact his death has and will continue to have on me. John was our youngest of 5 children who we raised in a middle-class town in Illinois. Not only was he an integral part of our close-knit family, but actively involved with the community he grew up with. School came easy to John, and even as early as elementary grade levels, he started to show critical academic thinking skills. He also developed an interest in many outside activities, such as sports, music, Boy Scouts, Illinois Future Problem Solvers, theater, and the academic team, just to name a few. By the time he graduated high school, he had decided to focus his college studies in the areas of history and government. Over the next 5 years, he was able to graduate from the University of Wisconsin at Whitewater with a double major in history and political science. It was after his graduation that he decided to investigate how the military could provide an opportunity to use his college degree in a way that would provide a challenging and rewarding opportunity. His nearly perfect score on the military entrance exams, known as the ASVAB, allowed him to pick from any of the top training opportunities in the military. His final choice was to follow in the family tradition and become a 4th-generation Navy man, just as his older brother had done several years earlier. After completing boot camp, he was sent on to train in the specialized area of cyber communication, from which he graduated second in his class in the fall of 2011. It was at this time the Navy assigned John to the Cyber Command at Buckley Air Force Base, Colorado, for additional training in his first duty assignment. During the first few months at Buckley, John dedicated himself to mastering many complex skills required for this assignment, and on his own initiative started mentoring others in his department. By the beginning of July 2012, John told us that his Navy command here at Buckley was in the early stages of assisting him in his goal to apply for officer candidate school, a dream he had since deciding to enter the Navy. Then, in the early morning hours of July 20th, while attending the premiere of the Batman movie with 4 of his close friends, those dreams and those educational achievements he had already obtained were ended with the cowardly act of one individual. Although John had only been assigned to the Cyber Command at Buckley for approximately 9 months before his death, it resulted in the Navy recognizing John's commitment to his country by awarding him with 3 honors posthumously. They were the Joint Service Achievement Medal, which is on the screen right now for everyone to see, and also the Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal. The third was a local Buckley Award known as the John T. Larimer Mentoring Award, which has been given out quarterly to military personnel who have also committed themselves to mentoring others like John. It should be noted that the military has not been the only organization to recognize John. The University of Wisconsin at Whitewater, in conjunction with Phi Alpha Theta National Honorary National History Honor Society, for which John was a past officer of, has also established a scholarship in John's name. No one will ever know for sure what John could have accomplished in his life if he had been allowed to live. But given his educational background, his dedication to excellence, and the opinion of others, one can only speculate it had the potential of importance. So what is my ultimate purpose for this impact statement, Your Honor? It's twofold. The first is to document in just a few words my son's life and achievements, and the second is to request a just punishment to his murderer. Clearly, it is impossible to accomplish the first objective in just a few paragraphs. However, the second objective can be covered clearly and succinctly in just a few words. I hereby request that the courts of the state of Colorado take a strong and decisive stand in assigning final punishment. It is my further request that the courts recognize that the murder of 12 people and the horrific wounding of so many others deserves no sympathy of any kind, and that James Egan Holmes receive the maximum punishment. Thank you, Your Honor. Sincerely, Scott Larimer. And with the court's permission, Mr. Larimer, who is present in the courtroom, asks that I be permitted to read the language of his awards that he received from the military.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. The Joint Service Achievement Medal. Cryptologic Technician Collection 3rd Class John T. Larimer, United States Navy, distinguished himself by exceptionally meritorious achievement while serving as a technical reporter within the Signals Intelligence Directorate of the National Security Agency, Central Security Service, Colorado, from October 2011 to July of 2012. During this period, Petty Officer Larimer provided outstanding leadership, professionalism, and technical expertise to a 24-hour multi-agency watch. Designated as his section's subject matter expert, he skillfully trained 3 personnel and personally produced and issued over 1,500 time-sensitive reports with a remarkable 99% accuracy rating. His actions built a highly effective workforce and ensured national-level decision-makers were armed with quality and actionable intelligence. Additionally, Petty Officer Larimer issued 25 intelligence reports that provided real-time support to 6 combat search and rescue missions, ultimately improving battle space awareness that allowed for the safe extraction of United States service members conducting combat operations in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. In the dedication of his service to his country and through his distinctive achievements, Petty Officer Larimer reflected credit upon himself, the National Security Agency, Central Security Service, the United States Navy, and the Department of Defense. For the other award, the Department of the Navy certifies that the Secretary of the Navy has awarded the Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal posthumously to Cryptological Technician Collection 3rd Class Information Dominance Warfare, John T. Larimer, United States Navy, for professional achievement while assigned to Navy Information Operations Command Colorado from October 2011 to July 2012, displaying exceptional rating, knowledge, and resourcefulness as crew leading mentorship coordinator for over 100 joint service personnel. He conducted numerous on-duty and off-duty one-on-one training sessions. His total dedication to the development of his peers greatly enhanced command morale and personnel readiness. Additionally, his efforts in all facets of mission support resulted in superb reporting of time-sensitive critical intelligence to operational commands and national-level decision-makers, leading to the success of operations vital to national security. His contributions to the Navy and to the nation were singularly outstanding and are a direct reflection of his untiring, inspirational leadership and unwavering professionalism. Petty Officer Larimer's commitment to service, superior professionalism, and devotion to duty reflected great credit upon him and were in keeping with the highest traditions of the United States Naval Force. Command Officer, Navy Commanding Officer. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. McGuire?
If we could hear from John Gerhauser.
Your Honor, I have a victim impact statement from Vanessa, V-A-N-E-S-S-A, Ayala, A-Y-A-L-A, cousin of homicide victim Jonathan Blanc. To whom it may concern, I am Vanessa Ayala, the cousin of Jonathan Blanc. Jonathan was one of the 12 victims of the Aurora Theater shooting the night of July 20th, 2012. First off, I would like to say that Johnny's death has impacted my life greatly. I looked up to him like he was my brother. I remember when I first learned about the shooting, it was 5 a.m. July 20th, and I was on my way to work. I worked at Lowe's at the time. I had my radio on, and all that they had been broadcasting was breaking news about the theater in Aurora. I remember later that day I was on a break and had mentioned to a coworker that I felt blessed we didn't know anyone that was at the theater that night. Later when I got home around 3:30 p.m., I got on Facebook and seen that my cousin Johnny's wife, Chantel Blanc, had messaged me saying, "Call me ASAP 911. I made the call and she told me that Johnny was in the Aurora Theater. I felt sick to my stomach. I asked if she had heard anything and she said she did not. Immediately I turned on the news and started calling some of the hospitals but didn't have any luck. I remember falling to my knees, begging Johnny not to be dead. He was too strong to fall victim to such an act. 8 p.m. rolled around and I got a text from his wife Chantel. Johnny had passed. I was in such a denial that I still tried calling his cell phone and hearing his voice on the answering machine. That made everything all right for a brief moment. How can you justify the death of such an incredible man? The answer, you don't. I have learned that the pain never goes away completely. You just make room for it. Losing Johnny has changed my life in ways I couldn't imagine before. I was going to get married the following year in 2013. Johnny and his wife were going to be in my wedding. After he died, I canceled the whole wedding. Not only did I miss out on my big day, I ended up getting separated from my fiancée because of the death of Johnny, which put me in a depression, and our relationship had fallen apart. I now live day by day and can't stand when people say that they hate their lives. I feel it's a selfish thing to think or feel because Johnny had been through a lot, but always was positive and lived his life to the absolute fullest. I try so hard to live how he lived. If I could only be a fraction of how amazing he was, I would be content. I feel like it was an extremely selfish act of the defendant to have committed such a hate act. I refuse to use his name in this letter because I feel like giving that boy such credit would be unjust to my cousin Johnny. That boy disgusts me beyond measure. It's not fair that he has already lived 3+ years past the people he killed. No one should be able to decide when someone else dies, and that's exactly what he did. He should be put into general population. What he did was certainly not fair. There is nothing he can or will say that will ever justify what he did. After Johnny was killed, I had a lot of trouble getting motivated to go to work. I had a lot of anxiety attacks and had to stay away from large groups of people. It took me over a year to go into a movie theater, and when I finally did, I had to leave the movie early. There are days when I just want to call Johnny and ask him for advice. He had a way to make bad days better, and he had a smile that would brighten the darkest of rooms. I miss that smile, and the way he was always so upbeat and never let anything bring him down. Even in his death, Johnny inspires me to be great. He was an overcomer, and that's what I want to be too. Memories are all I have left now, and all I can do is hope that this letter has an impact, and that boy gets the penalty that's right. Signed, Vanessa Ayala.
Thank you. Ms. Stitch McGuire.
Mallory Baker.
Your Honor, this is a victim impact statement about Gordon Cowden. The court will recall that Gordon Cowden was murdered by that guy over there when he shot him through his body with a .40 caliber handgun, one of two that he had that night. This is from Graves Cowden, Graves, Cowden, brother of homicide victim Gordon Cowden. My younger brother, Gordon Ware Cowden, W-A-R-E, was among those who lost their lives in the shootings in Aurora. In 1960, when I was 4 years old, I was at home when I took a telephone call from my dad. He called from the hospital and told me, quote, "You have a new baby brother." 51 years later, while traveling abroad with my dad, we arrived at our hotel to find a message asking us to call my older brother, George. We waited an hour or two before I placed the call at what would have been 5 o'clock in the morning in Texas. We did not know that George had flown to Colorado. When George answered, I misunderstood what he told me at first, so I said, "Say again?" "Your brother Gordon was killed in Aurora," he said. A half-century passed between the phone call reporting Gordon's birth and another his death. My family and I miss him terribly. There is irreparable pain, sometimes muted but always present in my family, and I realize that my heart, our hearts, have been broken in several ways. Personally, my heart is broken for the pain I have seen my family and others endure. My heart is broken for the absence of my brother. My heart is broken for the senseless way in which he died. My heart is broken for my breach of faith in a God who did not intervene to stop the events of that morning. Maybe God would have stopped it, but could not. Maybe God could have stopped it, but did not. What I know is that it was not stopped. And so I will live my life contemplating the bitter mystery. How could such a thing happen? Maybe there's no answer to that question. Maybe that's what I have to accept. But not yet. Not now. To all the families impacted by the shootings, I hope you have found or are able to find some kind of peace and closure. Graves Cowden.
Thank you.
Michael Burris.
All right, I'm going to read a victim impact statement from Linda Yunker, L-I-N-D-A-Y-U-N-K-E-R, cousin of homicide victim John Larimer. Ours is a large and very close family. When my cousin's son, John Larimer, was killed in Aurora, Colorado, it affected every member of our family, not only parents and siblings, but grandparents, cousins, aunts, and uncles. There was a hole in our family that will never be filled. The suffering the family is experiencing makes me physically ill. I have times where I don't remember saying things. My own kids tell me that I told them something, and I just don't remember. This mostly happens when I have viewed testimony or read articles related to the shooting. I teach high school, and the first code red drill after the shooting was in September 2012. I fell apart. Luckily, I had another teacher in the room. I had to explain to these kids why their teacher was sobbing. Will I be able to keep them safe in a dangerous situation? Can I keep it together? I pray I can. When I go to a public event, I look for the exits, how to escape, where would I hide? I wasn't even in the same state as the shooting, but it has had a ripple effect. I am a tough, strong, positive woman. It amazes me that I can be shattered with one photo of the defendant or one word about the shooting. It's not fair to affect a person's life that way. Just think of all the lives that have been touched by this evil. What I'm going through is nothing compared to the mothers, fathers, and siblings of the victim, but it still affects me. It's the ripple effect. Thank you. Linda Younker.
Thank you. Ms. H. McGuire.
Brandon Gallagher.
Aaron Christian, it's Erinchriisten, who is the mother of Theater 9 survivor Stephanie Davies, who I just recently read the statement of. I, Aaron Christian, am the mother of one of the victims, Stephanie Davies. It's very difficult to describe in words the magnitude of the physical, mental, and emotional harm the defendant has caused to my daughter, my family, and myself, but I will do my best. Writing this is one of the most difficult and heartbreaking things I have ever had to relive. The evening of July 19th, 2012, my daughter, Stephanie Davies, told me that her and her friend Allie Young were going to attend the premiere of the new Batman movie, The Dark Knight Rises. My other daughter, Ashley Davies, who has Down syndrome, also wanted to go, but because of the 12:30 a.m. start time, I elected to have Ashley stay home with me. Since I knew that Stephanie and Allie were going to the theater and that it was a relatively safe place to be in the middle of the night, surrounded with families, I felt confident in going to sleep. When I was awoken from a sound sleep by the phone ringing at 1:30 in the morning, I had no idea the horror that was in store. And when Stephanie told me that there was a shooting at the theater and that Allie had been hit, my mind couldn't grasp the concept of hit. What? Hit? What does that mean? I don't understand. Is this some kind of joke? No, Mom. Allie was shot. What? Where? I don't understand. She was shot inside the theater. There were people getting their heads blown off in front of me. Oh, dear God, are you all right? Is she okay? Where are you? I'm coming to you. No, not yet. They're moving us. Tell me as soon as you find out where they're taking you and I'll be on my way. I've got to go. My battery is low and the ambulance is taking Allie to the hospital. I need to find out which one so I can call her parents. Call me back. That was the longest and most tense and intense few minutes waiting to hear from her again. I ran upstairs to get Ashley. Stephanie calls back. They're taking us to Gateway High School. Okay, I'm on my way. Gotta go, my phone's almost out of battery. I've been on the phone with Allie's parents and Dad. I called Dad because you weren't answering the phone. Oh my God, I didn't hear the phone ring. We're on our way. I called Wes. Wes is Stephanie's stepdad who lives in California that she called because she couldn't get a hold of me. This is a mother's worst nightmare, to not be available for your child in an emergency situation. I didn't hear the phone because I was sound asleep. Wes, I'm in the car driving to Gateway. Where is Gateway? Google it. Is there anything on the news as to what happened? Of course not. We are the news. Oh God, please, this can't be real. I've got to get to her. Wes, hurry, where am I going? I know generally, but I need to know specifically. Wes is guiding me. I'm in a collective state of panic, and Ashley knows that something terrible has happened, but doesn't know exactly what, nor do I. Panic, anxiety, confusion, disbelief, fear, sick, vomiting, shaking, crying, anguish torturing my mind and body. I'm one of the first people at Gateway. Am I in the right place? Yes. I see someone else crying and panic-stricken. Oh dear God, where are they? What am I supposed to do? Is there someone to ask? No. Waiting. It feels like an eternity. Finally, Stephanie calls. I'm on my way now. They've put us on buses. They said that you cannot touch me because of contaminating the evidence. More and more people are arriving at Gateway to await the possible arrival of their loved ones. A news van arrives. Thank God, here come the buses. I see her. As she gets off the bus, a police officer is directing her where to go. I run to her and I want so much to hug and hold her, but I cannot. She goes into the school. It's chaos. Reporters asking questions, but no one really knows anything much. People crying, hugging each other, and waiting in fear, not knowing if and when they will find out what has happened to their loved ones. It's still dark out when Stephanie is released to come home. I run to her, we hug each other, and Ashley too is crying. A reporter asks for a statement. No! The ride home is a relief, but awkward. I want her to tell me exactly what happened, but I don't want to pressure her or make her more uncomfortable. I start by apologizing for not hearing the phone ring when she called. She told me that she tried calling the home phone, then my cell, then she called Wes, and he tried to call me too. I feel so terrible I didn't hear the phone. How could I have not heard the phone so many times? Was the ringer off? Did it not ring? Her mother was asleep when she needed me. You cannot believe how devastatingly bad that I feel about that. And although I did ultimately hear the phone within about 10 minutes of her initial call to me, and I called her back right away, it still haunts me that she was unable to get a hold of me right away and had to call Wes in California. We were told by a detective that when we got home that Stephanie was to remove her clothing, bag, and seal it for evidence. It was still dark when we got home. She walked into the kitchen and I really saw her for the first time as I turned on the light. She was literally covered in blood from head to toe and I burst out in tears. Then she told me that the blood was from the dead bodies that she had to climb over to get to Allie. Oh God, my poor little girl. All of her 21 years I've tried to protect her. How? Why? Why did this happen? Why? There was no sleep to be had that night as she began to tell me her story. Allie had bought the tickets online for the Aurora Theater premiere. They drove there together in Stephanie's car. They got to the theater, and there were 2 seats together on the left side of the theater on the second row of the upper rows. Allie sat in the aisle seat, and Stephanie sat in the next one in. Stephanie was sitting next to 2 young men who offered to hold their seats for her as they went to the concession for popcorn and drinks. Stephanie and Allie came back to their seats and excitedly awaited the start of the movie. The previews were over. The movie was about 20 minutes into the plot when the right side emergency exit door suddenly opened and a figure all clad in black appeared. He stood there momentarily, then pulled something out which made a bright spark and then hurled it into the audience. As it happens, the object that he threw whizzed between Stephanie and Allie and landed in the row behind them. They initially thought it was some kind of joke, but then their eyes and lungs started burning. Allie immediately popped up out of her seat and was shot. She fell and rolled down the aisle. Stephanie sunk down in her seat and dialed 911. The 2 young men that were sitting next to her had been shot as well. Total panic ensued. People were screaming and running, trying to get out of the theater. Stephanie army crawled on her elbows and knees over a young man's body who had been shot in the head to get to Allie, who was being trampled by people escaping the mayhem. The movie was at the part where bats were flying out of a cave. People screaming and running, and Stephanie said it was like being in the mouth of hell. Stephanie crawled to Allie and pulled her into the first row with the metal guardrails adjacent to the main center aisle of the theater. When Stephanie pushed Allie's long brown hair away from her face, she saw the blood spurting from Allie's neck. Stephanie pressed her fingers to Allie's carotid artery to stop the bleeding and prevent Allie from bleeding to death. Allie was in and out of consciousness, while Stephanie was on high alert, aware of everything that was transpiring. Although Allie told Stephanie to run, Stephanie refused to leave her friend alone to die, so Stephanie remained by her friend's side throughout the whole ordeal, treating and protected Allie, while all the time Stephanie herself was in harm's way. Stephanie kept the vigil while keeping Allie quiet, and all the time her fingers pressed on Allie's neck. The police had arrived but had not yet entered Theater 9. The movie had been turned off and the lights were on. At this point, Stephanie, who was crouched on the floor peering between the seats, says the defense I realize that this is a very detailed account of the events of that night, and you may wonder how or even why I can remember and do remember exactly what she experienced. It's because give her justice without all the details. The aftermath is another story in and of itself because it has affected us in ways that are hard to define without knowing her story. I no longer can sleep without a sleeping aid out of fear that I might miss that important call. We completely stopped going to the theater. The trauma that our family experienced is so profound that we got a service dog to help us with PTSD. She goes everywhere with us. Both of my daughters would sleep in bed with me because of nightmares and fear of being alone in the dark. Although Stephanie did go to a therapist, she was in such a state of denial that anything at any time result in the subconscious monster's rearing its ugly head, which in turn put the whole family on edge like walking on eggshells all of the time. Because it could be any inadvertent thing that you did or something accidentally said that would set her off. For instance, we went shopping at Southlands Mall, and a young man wearing a motorcycle helmet and black jacket stopped in to see his friend who was working there. Stephanie was so shaken that we had to leave with her almost hysterical. She couldn't cope with the horror of having seen people murdered in front of her 21-year-old eyes. Fortunately, as fate would have it, she became pregnant and now has a healthy son to occupy her mind and energy. She's a single mother, and so both of them live with me. That's not to say that she's recovered from her trauma. She cried when the penalty verdict was announced. We are all disappointed that he didn't get the death penalty. It upsets me to know that my taxes and all of the other victims and their families' taxes are going to help preserve the defendant's life when he has such disregard for the lives that he took and ruined. I have a hard time calling this justice when he has a roof over his head, 3 meals a day, free medical and dental care, a free college education, free cable television, free state-of-the-art gymnasium, albeit he is incarcerated, which will prevent him from love, marriage, conjugal visits, or procreation. Where's the justice in that? Where's my daughter's free college education, or free medical and dental care, or free cable television, or free gym membership? We, the victims and families, not only have to provide for our own children, but bonus, we get to provide for this murderer with our tax dollars. Justice? I heard he had no emotion throughout the trial except when the verdict was announced for life imprisonment. Then he and his family smiled. Unbelievable. I believe that the real world was too difficult for him and that he deliberately embarked on a course to free himself of responsibility. A coward to the core. In the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson wrote that all men are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The defendant has his life, he can pursue happiness, and retains a certain amount of liberty while incarcerated, and all on the taxpayer's dollar. Do you think he calculated the risk? Smart? Is that why he threw up his hands when he saw the police officer? As for me, I would like to see all of his unalienable rights revoked in total. Neither he nor his family should be allowed to profit in any way, i.e. from the sale of a book or movie deal to television interviews to any form of free speech and or notoriety. It should be noted that I do not blame his family for what he did, just that neither him nor they should profit from his murderous rampage. I also request that he never be allowed to have any kind of contact for any reason with me, my daughters, or any family or friends of ours. Aaron Christian, August 10th, 2015.
Thank you. All right, it's noon, so let's go ahead and take our lunch break at this time. Let's take an hour and a half. I'll see everybody back here at 1:30. The court will be in recess. Thank you.
Please rise.
Thirty minutes.